Hello and welcome to this overview of my November favorites, and all of them are historical romances. I'm Olivia, your new favorite resource for book recommendations you can easily screenshot, and you're watching Random Olive Reads. We start here with Only Beloved by Mary Balog. This is book 7 and the final book of the Survivors Club series. We have our Duke of Stanbrook, who was the one who had opened his home up to all of those survivors many years ago. And his tragic backstory is that his only son had died in the war, and his wife was distraught about it, so much so that she threw herself off a cliff on the estate. Now, the malicious rumor in town is that the Duke had pushed her, but he didn't. And his backstory is even more tragic than we ever could have guessed. But it will take all book to unravel and find out what really happened to him. We're a couple days away from, well, it's a couple days after the wedding of the couple from the previous book, and since this is the final book of the series, all of George's friends have gotten married and found their happily ever afters. And dear George is all alone. He realizes that he's happy for all of his friends, but he wants companionship for himself. He decides that he wants to marry again and has a very specific lady in mind. He first met Dora in book 4 of the series a year ago when visiting his friend's estate, and he decides to return to her cottage to propose marriage. And so Dora's backstory is that her mother had ran off with a man when she was 17 and caused a big, huge scandal in the family. Now, Dora's younger sister was only 5 years old at the time, so Dora forfeited her debut and entry into society to stay home and care for her sister. Eventually, when her father remarried, Dora had moved to her current town to be the music teacher there, and she's lived pretty independently for many years. At this point, she's like 39 years old and a well established spinster. She had been awed by the Duke since the first time she met him, and after the initial shock of the proposal, she agrees to marry him. So, this book is a soft, slow build of friendship and companionship between Dora and George. And we start to see how much they begin to enjoy each other's company. Overall, this book was delightful to read. I really couldn't put it down. I really wanted to find out, like, what was the mystery of George's backstory? Why is he talking about his previous marriage in such miserable terms? What really happened there? And then we also find out how Dora deals with her mother and the abandonment of her youth. As always, Balog knows how to pack in all of the emotion to her stories. Next up, we have When She Was Wicked by Anne Barton. This is book 1 of the Honeycoats series. So we have Annabelle Honeycoat, who is an impoverished seamstress with a deathly ill mother and a younger sister to support. While working at the dress shop, she overhears various pieces of gossip and she uses that information to extort money from the very wealthy. Now, one of her victims, Owen Sherborne, a handsome duke, catches her at the drop point and threatens to expose her. But then somehow he starts to feel bad for her and brings her home as an indentured servant to make dresses for his sisters. There's a bunch of miscommunication and secrecy between this couple mixed with a healthy dose of social class difference, but the instant attraction is such fun to read, and this book is a really great setup to the rest of the series with all of those sisters everywhere to find matches for. My next pick is Lady Meets Earl by Christy Carlisle. This is book 2 of the Love on Holiday series. It doesn't seem to connect with the first book from what I can tell, so totally fine to read it as a standalone. So, our poor guy James is being threatened by a loan shark after losing all his money from his shipping business. And lucky him, he's inherited an earldom from his estranged uncle. But then he finds out the earldom is in debt and there's only one property that he could potentially sell. In another part of town, separately, Lady Lucy is living her ever helpful, nearly spinster life and gets invited to visit her feisty aunt for a while. While traveling to the estate via train, she bumps into James and they make friendly acquaintance with each other. Unfortunately, they soon find out they're headed to the same destination. Lucy's aunt is occupying the house that James needs to sell. Now, while it seems like this could be a major conflict, Lucy is actually pretty mature about the situation and strives for transparency and communication. It's actually really delightful to read about these two people open up to each other and actually talk to each other like adults who know how to communicate. Next up, I have a novella. This is A Holiday by Gaslight by Mimi Matthews and set in Victorian England. We have Sophie, the eldest daughter of a baronet who has been courting Mr. Edward Sharp for 2 months and breaks it off because they seemingly don't suit. It's mostly because the courtship was awkward and stilted because he was trying way too hard to be a gentleman. She eventually decides to give him another chance with his holiday visit to her family's house, and this time he knows he needs to win her over. This one is a super sweet, short read for the holidays. And lastly, I have How to Win a Wallflower by Samara Parrish. This is book 3 of the Rebels with a Cause series. We have our Duke's sister, Charlotte, who is the younger sister of the main guy from book 2, and she's in her like 4th season and uninterested in any suitors. She mostly spends her time helping her brother's political causes and charitable causes. Charlotte is the ultimate do-gooder social butterfly. Also, I realized, like, partway through this book, she's not the wallflower in this story. No, the wallflower in this story is our guy John, who is Charlotte's brother's best friend, who has spent the past 10 years away from the London scene, working on various scientific inventions. He's back in town, though, because his older brother died, leaving him as the new Viscount and in a whole hell of a lot of debt. John needs to figure out a way to pay off all of these debts so he can go back to his very solitary lifestyle in a cabin in the woods. Charlotte, however, has had a crush on John for years and years, and so she decides to help him with his debt problem. They need to work together, they get closer, and even though our dear brother Duke has already warned each person away from each other, we see how that actually turns out. Overall, it was a great month of reading, and I really enjoyed all of the books that I've shared with you here today. Thank you so much for watching this video. I've put links in the description box. Like and subscribe so you don't miss future videos, and you can follow me on Instagram at randomolive.